Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to the show. And you know, that song is so gorgeous. I always says, we got to keep moving on, and move on we will. We got a great show for you tonight, and it's on drug education, and hopefully the syncing is going to be okay, and if it's not, we'll do the best we can, because the information is so important that that's the important thing. So tonight, we're honored to have two guests from a group that's an international group called the Foundation for a Drug-Free World, and we have two of their ambassadors here tonight, which are Dr. Thomasina Sedaris and Mr. Robert Carter, both from the state of Connecticut, where they run their programs. And I want to tell you a little bit about each one of them. So, engineer, if you can put on the pictures of Mr. Carter first, and we'll start with him. So, Mr. Carter, Bob Carter, is a native of Bloomfield, Connecticut, a husband, a family man, a business entrepreneur, a track athlete, and humanitarian. His passion as a cross-country and track athlete at Bloomfield High School continued on into his college career at University of Rochester. And there he began his vocation as a painter and started his own company soon after, Robert Carter Painting. His passions are humanitarian projects, advocacy, utilizing drug-free world educational technology, and safeguarding our youth and families with accurate information on the harm of marijuana. And there you see Bob. Our next guest is Dr. Thomasina Sedaris, and we'll put on her pictures here on the screen for you. Dr. Sedaris is a doctor, wife, mother, and humanitarian. She graduated with honors from the Michigan College of Optometry in 1988 and was the owner of 7 optometry offices in Michigan before relocating to Connecticut, where she resides with her husband, you see here, Dr. Stephen Sedaris, a dentist as I, in Litchfield, Connecticut. She is currently owner, director of Eyes on Litchfield, an optometry practice and optical boutique in Litchfield, Connecticut, and is an agent of Transitions Optical, has been featured in numerous optical trade journals, and has been guest expert on the NBC TV segment Mass Appeal. Here you see her with Miss Connecticut. Dr. Sedaris is president of the Effective Management Association in Connecticut, vice president of public relations for the Effective Management Association globally, and an effective ambassador for the Foundation for a Drug-Free World. So I want to welcome both these humanitarians to the show tonight, and we can put them on the screen. So greetings to both of you, Dr. Sedaris and Mr. Carter.
Hi, doctor. How are you?
Oh, I'm very happy to have you both here with me.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Nice to see you.
It's my pleasure. And I know tonight we got a great show because it deals with our families, our kids. And so let's get started. We have so much to cover. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to bring out something that the both of you sent to me and from your foundation. I don't know if you wanted to say a little bit about this, Dr. Sedaris.
Sure. Yeah, the booklet has excellent information about the truth about drugs. It has a video which has real people, real stories, their experiences with how they experienced drugs, got addicted to drugs, and then the long-term effects it created on their bodies, on their minds, on their relationship, and and how the program helped them. So it's very vital information so that people don't get hooked on drugs.
It's a very impressive brochure, and Interesting. It says here that it's in 123 countries worldwide. And very impressive that these little booklets, Mr. Carter, these little booklets are in 22 languages.
Yes, it's great. Great having them so available.
And Dr. Sedaris, you were telling me there's a booklet on each drug?
Correct, yes. So each specific drug, like the truth about marijuana, LSD, alcohol, cocaine, every specific drug goes over the effects, street names, short-term effects, long-term effects, how the drugs are, can be found, what they look like, just so people can even identify them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was looking at your booklet here, and it said something very interesting, Bob. It says here, our drug culture, and it was saying how it seems to have started with the rock movement in the 60s and LSD, and back then, I guess, it was glamorized. And Bob, what does this thing about drug culture? What was that? That's like, because I think back when I was in high school, it was a different time. Is that what you mean by drug culture?
Yes, it just became very popularized, and so became kind of a fad, and the thing to do, unfortunately.
Interesting. Now, I know tonight's show, you both had mentioned to me that you wanted to speak about vaping and marijuana because the kids are really doing that wholesale across the whole country. And so I ask you, Mr. Carter, is because it makes no sense to me. We have all of these legalizations going on of marijuana, and yet, from what you were telling me before the show, that's not really the case that should be occurring. So, can you tell me a little bit more about that, Mr. Carter?
Well, unfortunately, there's quite a bit of misinformation in the press, which puts it in a positive light. Oftentimes, the actuality of the situation is that there is no positive light on a drug like marijuana. It's has increased in its strength as it's been developed over the last 30, 40 years. And it has many, many chemicals in it. And it is, frankly, very addictive. And it has tremendous side effects.
Interesting. Yeah, I know when I was looking at this, when I went to high school, this THC level of marijuana was about 1%. And it seems like in today's world that it's like, I don't know, 15, 25%. Is that true?
That's right. It gets up to 15, 20%. And that's before techniques, application techniques that increase the percentage much, much higher.
Wow. Well, I wanted to ask you, Dr. Sedaris, because Bob was talking to me about the high levels and what's been found out, and with the National Institute of Health researching on the effects on our young kids. And I know that you wanted to mention some personal stories as a doctor.
Yeah, the reason why I got involved with the Foundation for a Drug-Free World has to do with years ago, being in an exam room, and a mother just broke down crying in front of me, and just got in good communication with her and found.
Interesting. It seems like we lost her feed for a minute, and so we'll just continue with the next phase here. So until we get her back. So I know that you both sent me a video from the Surgeon General, Bob, right?
Yes, very pertinent information.
Okay, so you know what, engineer? Let's put on the video from the Surgeon General.
I'm very, very concerned as Surgeon General at how far and how fast we're going on marijuana in this country. I'm very concerned. Number one, this isn't your mother's marijuana. Marijuana a decade ago was 5% THC. single digits THC. You now have professionally grown strains that are 20, 30% THC, and then they're concentrating them into oils, into waxes. They're vaping them, they're dabbing them, they're shatter, and you're getting 90, 95% THC. It's like the difference between you having a glass of wine and a pint of grain alcohol. It literally is. And so we've normalized this idea of marijuana use across the country way too fast, to the point that in communities in California, there's 1 in 5 pregnant women, 20% of pregnant women reporting that they are using marijuana during pregnancy. Youth attitudes are changing about marijuana across the country. And I want you to hear me say this as the nation's doctor. There is no such thing as medical marijuana. And I see some eyebrows raised out there. We don't talk about medical foxglove. We don't talk about medical opium. There is no other substance out there that, as a physician, we say grow it in your backyard, crumble it up, bake it into a brownie, or roll it into a cigarette and smoke it, and that's going to be good for whatever ails you. There are over 100 components of marijuana, some of them which have medicinal properties and medicinal promise, and we need to make sure we push for the research so that we can say to each individual, this component has been proven to be beneficial for your disease, and here are the risks and the benefits. But I think we have to have the courage to have a more nuanced conversation, particularly with so many folks out there coming out in favor of legalization with an election coming up. And from a social justice point of view,
So that's amazing, because that's the physician in charge of the country talking about his fear and concern of marijuana. But I'm totally confused. How could it be that the head physician of the country is concerned? And so, Dr. Sedaris, I guess I'll point this question to you as a health practitioner. How can it be that he's concerned, yet we have all this legalization? And then after that, Mr. Carter, you can answer.
Yeah, I think it has to do with, there are people out there that are profiting off of, the sales of marijuana. We have to look at the effects it has on people, on their minds, on their bodies, long term. Like you just said, our Surgeon General is expressing his concern. So how can it be legalized? Just because it's legalized doesn't mean it's good for you. It doesn't mean it's right. So that's what we want to help make people aware of is, what is the truth? We want to help people, want to protect people.
Interesting. Yeah, that's actually, I was looking at this drug-free world, and that's actually what you call this program. You're calling it the truth about drugs. So, Mr. Carter, why do you call this program the truth about drugs, and like correlating this to what the Surgeon General was just talking about?
Drug-free world doesn't have a slant towards any particular organizational profit. They're simply interested in getting the facts about drugs across. That's the entire intention.
Interesting. You know what? Let me be very forthright, because some people, I'm a doctor too, like Dr. Sedaris, and some people would say, well, you know what? He's a painter. What does he know about drugs? But it seems to me that if our health practitioners are saying that we got to be careful about what we're doing, and yet it's still happening, is that why you got involved in this? Because you felt that what was going on wasn't going according to facts and science?
Well, I started reading the materials, and they just ring true. And that's just my observation. I've read the material. The materials are readily available to anyone who wishes to research it, and they just ring true. It's not taking on a slant. It's just presenting the facts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You actually sent in some slides that I want the engineer to. We'll just throw one of them up here, because I found very interesting information on these slides. And Dr. Sedaris, tell me, what is this one about here?
Yeah, so this survey was done, and they found that a considerable proportion of respondents to the survey increased their use of cannabis by 44%, prescription benzodiazepines 34%, and prescription opioids by 28%. And almost half, 40% of the survey respondents said they had increased the amount of alcohol they drank during the pandemic.
It's unbelievable, because you know what? We want to be healthy,
Right.
in order to avoid COVID. And here, what's happening is the exact reverse.
Exactly. Turning to the wrong solution. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not a solution, really.
unbelievable. I mean, I don't understand. And then, you know what? In New York State, I know we have a heroin epidemic ongoing before the COVID. And now what you're saying on these figures, that it's doubled on top of that already. Is that true?
Yeah, it's alarming, because facts don't lie, statistics don't lie. That's why it's so important to us to get the information out, because if people really have the facts, people have the truth, they can see it for themselves and do something about it, so they can make wise choices.
That makes total sense to me. Bob, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Because I can see Dr. Sedaris is a health practitioner, and you're not in the health field, and you're busy with. I assume you, like anyone else, you're so busy with your work, and then you have your family, and if your wife is like mine, she wants you around, and you want to spend some time with her. So, like, how do you find time for this?
It's very important, the education, to let people know the information on this factor, so they can make proper decisions based on information, not just on misinformation or very limited information.
Yeah,
People's lives are at stake.
Exactly. We're all part of society, and everyone's actions affect us to some degree. And being a wife and a mom, and having been around hockey players and lacrosse players and football players, you want people to be alert. You want people to be creative. You want people to be active. And these drugs they're dumbing down our society, and it's dangerous, to think of people being under the influence of a drug and driving a car. Or, I want my patients to know that when they come to me, that I'm 100% drug-free, and they can count on me to be in the moment with them, really taking care of them. And I want that in return when I go somewhere in society. It's almost like our obligation to help each other. So how do we make time? It's like Mr. Carter said, it's important because we care about people.
Makes sense. So what you're both saying is that it's not that you have the time, it's you make the time.
That's right.
Interesting. Interesting. You know what, engineer? They sent a bunch of these slides. Can we put the next one up?
Okay, this would be for adolescent cannabis use during the pandemic. The frequency of adolescent alcohol and cannabis use has increased. Frequency of cannabis increased significantly from before the pandemic to post-pandemic, or at its current state.
It's amazing, because here what's happening is not only are we losing people due to this infection that we have worldwide, but now because of the stress, they're turning to drugs and alcohol. And I guess the point you're trying to make is that because of the misinformation, they think it's an acceptable solution. They don't realize what's happening. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. Turning to the incorrect solution, you have to get the truth about these the side effects out. Go ahead now.
Yeah, in essence, you're correct, right? We're being told to stay home, we're sheltered in place, and it's very, very introverting. And people are looking for things to cope and to get through the anxiety and get through the stress. But turning to something that's in essence is a poison is only going to make matters worse. We should be focusing on things like exercising and taking vitamins and doing things that make us happy, like creating artistic ventures, things that kind of get us out of our shells, get us extroverted. And that's why with this information, people can look at it for themselves, read it, understand it, and then decide. And it'd be pretty hard to look at this and read it and then decide, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to harm myself. And if it's okay with you, Ben, I'm going to go ahead and just read some of the short-term effects and long-term effects from the booklet, The Truth About Marijuana.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so short-term effects, short-term memory problems, severe anxiety, including fear that one is being watched or followed, very strange behavior, seeing, hearing, or smelling things that aren't there, not being able to tell imagination from reality, panic, hallucinations, loss of sense of personal identity, lowered reaction time, increased heart rate, risk of heart attack, increased risk of stroke, problems with coordination, impairing safe driving or playing sports, sexual problems, up to 7 times more likely to contract sexually transmitted infections than non-users. So those are the short-term effects. Some long-term effects.
That's pretty, you know what? I got to say something just to interrupt you or to interject.
Sure.
That's pretty, if those are the short-term effects, I don't even want to even, I guess, hear the long-term effects, but go ahead.
Yeah. So long-term effects, decline in IQ, poor school performance and higher chance of dropping out, impaired thinking and ability to learn and perform complex tasks, lower life satisfaction, addiction. About 9% of adults and 17% of people who started smoking as teens, potential development of opiate abuse, relationship problems, intimate partner violence, antisocial behavior, including stealing money or lying, financial difficulties, increased welfare dependence, and greater chances of being unemployed or not getting good jobs. So I don't know about you, but I don't want any of those things. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know, Bob, you wanted to say something. So go ahead.
Well, just getting back to Surgeon General's message, which I feel is very courageous, and I really respect that. Marijuana does not reduce pain. That's one myth about the marijuana. And also, it makes a person more sensitive to pain. So that's just one thing I wanted to put in there.
Very interesting. Well, you know what, engineer, if we can put up the next slide, because I know there's a lot of information that they sent. So I want to make sure we try and cover as much. I think this one here is something I think to do with vaping, and you had said something about what the incidence of what these kids also do when they vape versus they don't vape. Because I know I was reading that vaping has gone so sky high in the last few years. So Dr. Sedaris, on the column on the left, what are these things that if someone vapes versus they don't vape, what are the numbers there that you're pointing out?
let's see here. Yeah, so basically, you're going to have an increased chance of doing it's like a gateway drug to other things, and there's chemicals, and kids become dependent, and the additives and stuff it's very harmful to the body.
Interesting. So so I'm looking at this thing here. So if they vape, they're probably going to use other drugs and have sex and things like that. That's those numbers that you're having there are comparing one to the other. That's like what's the first one say? That first get a column. It's hard for me to see it, but you probably have it there.
Yeah, so if we just read across, it says binge drinking on greater than 1 day, so 16%.
And that's versus, how much does that last column say? Versus if they don't vape, how much is it?
So no vaping is 6.1 and vaping is 43.
Wow, so 7 times. So in other words, if these kids are vaping, they do binge drinking 7 times the amount. Wow, that's like unbelievable. What is the next thing that they have there?
It says use of opioid pain medicine without a prescription in lifetime. So
What is it? What is the difference there between a kid who vapes and the one who doesn't vape? What are the numbers?
7 to 26.
Wow, so that's like almost 4 times the amount. So I mean, that would mean that if a kid in high school vaping, and I mean, there's so many kids vaping nowadays, so that kid is probably going to do some kind of opioid.
Correct.
Wow. That's horrific. And then they're going to drink.
Yeah, and if we just go down the column, so use of marijuana goes from 7 to 50. Use of cocaine.
So wait, so you're saying if they vape, they're going to use marijuana 7 times as much?
Well, if
Wow, that's amazing.
Up to 50%.
Wow, so it's if you compare the 50 to, what is the other one, is what, 7% you said? 7?
Correct.
Wow, so it's like 7 times the amount. Amazing. You know what's amazing is because, vaping was supposed to like be this nice thing, and you have flavoring and no big deal. But yet, from what I'm seeing on this diagram, this is another example of like what Bob, Mr. Carter, you were saying, right? That the truth is not really what is being marketed.
That's right. Like you say, vaping was supposed to be something to handle tobacco addiction, and yet it's turning out to be entirely different than that. It's increasing addictions.
You know what? This is like, I'm glad I have you both on this show, because everything you keep bringing out, and I say, well, but this is what I thought was going on because of what was happening in our country. But then on the other aspect, then the scientific facts from these journals that you're showing here, and you were showing me these scientific journals are totally opposite. There's a video that you had sent us, and I know I want to make sure we get it on tonight. So, engineer, can you please put that video on that they have about the marijuana, because I want to make sure we get that on for our viewers tonight.
Ganja, pot, grass,
Kush,
dope, hash, swag,
weed,
sticky, marijuana.
I ended up being addicted to heroin, coke, meth. I've done it all, and it all started with pot.
Marijuana is the dried parts of the Indian hemp plant.
Hash is the sticky crystalline that comes off when they pick it.
A lot of it's like from Mexico, shipped over borders, and a lot of people manufacture their own and sell it. Hydroponics is like a system of growing weed.
There's a lot of science, there's a lot of chemistry that go into wanting to make it stronger and comparing it to what was available in the 60s and 70s. There is a huge difference in potency. It's so much more stronger. It's so much more intense and so much more damaging to the body.
The main mind-altering drug ingredient in marijuana is THC.
THC is what gets you high.
This drug is a hallucinogen, distorts your reality. It can be green, brown, or gray.
It's compressed most of the time, like into brick forms that are, real compressed, and they bag it into pounds and ounces, quarter ounces.
So weed is either smoked or baked.
You can smoke it from a bong, a pipe, you can roll it up as a joint. Some people, they'll dissolve the marijuana in butter and they'll make pop brownies, pop cookies, whatever food they want to ingest it with.
I was wrestling, I was in football, went to school, got A's. You know, I was a good kid.
I had this dream. I was going to make sure that I had an education. I was a B student, and then I went from that to a C, D.
I pushed aside my studies, I pushed aside any sports to do the drug.
I didn't want to go to school. I missed school all the time. I didn't graduate because of it.
Everything kind of slipped away. I lost the glimpse of hope I had.
I was probably 13, 14, something like that.
I started smoking weed when I was 14, I think.
17, can't forget that day.
I saw pot everywhere when I first started doing it. It made it okay for me.
I was with a friend. She's like, it's an herb, it's grown, it's safe, it's natural, and there's no problem with it.
I knew other people did it. It seemed harmless at the time to me.
Take a puff and pass it to your buddy sitting next to you. No one ever did, passed it up. Everyone always took a hit.
It started off as something very casual and fun, and then within a few weeks it was something that became an everyday habit.
And then it just turned into sort of like escapism, just to get away from everything.
I smoked weed so I didn't have to deal with life. It was kind of taking place of life. There's a common misconception that weed is not addictive.
I never thought I was addicted to marijuana. I thought it was just something that was part of my lifestyle. I thought it helped me relax.
I've become so accustomed to being stoned every night. When I wasn't doing it, it was out of the norm. Once you smoke it, you really don't feel like you can do anything without it. You just feel so high. You just want to be high for everything you do.
And there was nothing that I wanted to do with my day other than smoke weed. It was so weird. That was my driven purpose.
I always had this idea in my mind that I can live life and smoke weed at the same time, but I never could.
I'd want to get high every day. I'd want to get high when I woke up in the mornings.
My mind was so set on having it that it preoccupied so much of my thinking that became all that I did. That was all I thought about.
If I ran out of weed, I'd be pretty mad.
Irritable and annoyed with everything.
I was tired. I was nervous. I was anxious.
I couldn't sleep without it. I'd be up for days when I tried to stop.
It's an emotional roller coaster. It's very hard on you.
I'd feel depressed by not having done anything better with my life, but I would still use the drug to hide from the problem.
I was actually prom king. The drug dogs came to school, and I'd had some joint roaches in the ashtray of my truck. And they found him. I got kicked out of school for it.
I dropped out of school, I had no job, had no money to pay rent.
It unconsciously separated me from my family, and I was always concerned with when I was gonna go out and party, and it just, the priority list of friends or family just slipped underneath.
I stopped trying, and when that started, it just led to a different lifestyle.
If I needed to get a job interview that included a drug test, I wouldn't take that job because I couldn't stop using it.
I had a BMW, and I loved that car. I loved it. I was so high, and I just floored it, just went all out in it, and I took a curve and I lost it. I flipped the car over, and my first reaction, I had a quarter pound of weed in there, and my first reaction was grab the bag full of my weed.
One of my friends was smoking pot. Him and a buddy, he was going 80, went off the road and hit a tree, killed my other buddy.
I wound up in prison. I served 3 years, 11 months, and 19 days.
I've been locked up since I started smoking about 12 or 14 times.
Went to jail and been facing charges ever since. Got a felony on my record.
It ruins your chances to get a good job. It ruins your chances to get anywhere. Once you have a record, that's it. So it's not fun at all.
People say marijuana is a gateway drug. You can argue that all you want, if it is or it isn't. The fact of the matter is, when you smoke pot, the people that you hang out with are going to have other drugs around you. Eventually, you're going to run into it.
As much as I hate the word gateway drug, I'm the prime example of it, and I know lots of other people who followed the same path.
I basically realized that my gateway to those drugs was the fact that I couldn't stop smoking weed on a daily basis, because eventually you build a tolerance and then you stop getting high. So you still crave a high. So you go out and look for other drugs.
Which of course were even harder drugs.
So that's how I tried coke, and I'll go over to another friend's house and people would show up with mushrooms. Hey, you want to buy mushrooms?
After that, I started doing cocaine and Oxycontin.
Do some heroin.
Introduced to coke, Xanax, ecstasy, all that stuff. I wouldn't have touched any of that stuff because I wouldn't even know what being high was. So once you get high, it just changes everything.
Maybe nothing horrible is gonna happen to you those first 10 times you do it, but before you know it, it's gonna be a huge component of your life.
And personally, I wish I would have just avoided it. I know people who've grown up and never smoked weed and are perfectly fine. They're socially accepted. They have great lives.
It's all a big hype, you know what I mean? They just tell you that, oh yeah, you know, you just get high or whatever, everything will go away. That's BS. The problems that you had before you got high are still gonna be there when you're done being high.
You're gonna ruin relationships. You're gonna get yourself in trouble with the law. You're gonna screw your finances up. You're gonna screw your future up.
Took away, my chances of wrestling in college or playing football in college, going to college for academics because I was capable, and that is all gone. So now I can't vote, can't do anything. Normal citizen.
I would have been in college right now, about to graduate, probably going for something decent, a good degree, get a job, get my life together, not going through what I'm going through right now.
It wasn't something that was harmless. Smoking pot ended up taking my life away and leading me onto another life that I never wanted.
Horrific.
So impactful, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the stories, the one there with the boy talking about how he flips his car, almost gets killed, and all he's looking at is how to make sure he saves the marijuana bag.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important because, like the one girl said, she knows people who weren't taking drugs, had never done it. Of course, that's the ideal scene, right? Let's educate people so they never even touch the addictive substances. So I know we had some technical difficulties earlier, but that's what I was trying to say is that's why I do feel passionate about helping people and giving them the truths, because I don't want to have another mother in my exam room breaking down crying because she just lost her son to drugs. I don't want any parent to ever have to experience that. So, the more we can get this information out on a global scale, every life we save is a life saved, and our society will be that much better.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about, the fact of what's going on is quite amazing. Could you put one of the other slides on, engineer?
Okay, monitoring the future study. Okay, September 15th. Vaping marijuana and vaping nicotine have increased dramatically among 19 to 22-year-olds, with both more than doubling between 2017 and 2019. The use of marijuana in any form in 2019 among young adults ages 19 to 22 was at or near the highest levels seen over the past 4 decades, with annual prevalence at 43%.
Unbelievable. It's like, look at the increase in vaping across our country in youth. It's horrific, because when you look at that I'm thinking of that last graph that Dr. Sedaris, where you showed that when they vape, yeah, there it is, that when they vape, they do marijuana, and then now we have the pandemics, they're doing it even more than this shows, and then you have all these effects that you and Mr. Carter were bringing out, that, and the Surgeon General talked about, with teenage brain development and affecting their future. As how can, one of the things I've always thought is, how can you learn if you're in the classroom high on drugs?
That's right. How can you learn? How can you play sports? How can you even enjoy life, like for real?
Absolutely. Engineer, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, so let's see. This one is a survey on the youth risk behavior. Every other drug among young people is going down with the exception of marijuana. Lifetime marijuana use is the #1 risk factor for prescription opioid misuse. 21.7% of high schoolers report marijuana use, and 43.5% of students who reported currently abusing prescription opioids also reported currently using marijuana.
That's amazing. It's like, it's like, it makes you wonder, what are we doing for our kids? What kind of future are we setting our kids up for?
That's right, Doctor. This medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, they just lead right into opioid use and opioid use disorder.
Wow. I think there's a slide on that. Engineer, can you put up the slide? Because I think they gave us a slide on that one too. I think that, is that it there? Yeah, I guess this is this what you were talking about here, Mr. Carter?
Yes, that supposedly it's reducing pain when it's actually not reducing pain.
But I see all these advertisements, and I want to let's leave this up, engineer, because this is very interesting. Because I'm looking at this, and I don't understand, because you even have very celebrities selling medical marijuana, supposedly because it has all these great benefits, and yet continue, Mr. Carter, because it's like what you have on here is the reverse of what is being marketed.
Right. High frequency medical cannabis use is associated with worse pain among individuals with chronic pain. Cannabis use is not associated with reduced opioid use or longer treatment retention when used during methadone maintenance therapy.
Well, and so what I'm looking at, these are all recent, I see these are all recent studies, and they're from medical journals. These are not like Reader's Digest or, New Yorker, or these are all scientific studies that you're showing here.
Right. That's right.
Interesting. What is the next one?
What do we have here? The addition of cannabinoids to opioids did not reduce cancer pain. So it tells you something right there. It's not helping reduce pain.
That's what you were talking about earlier on. So this is where you got this information from. Because when you said it to me, I go, well, but you have all these different websites, and I see so many people selling the medical marijuana, but yet these are scientific studies that you're showing here.
Yes. The next one, individuals with high pain are more likely to consume cannabis multiple times a day.
Huh.
Makes sense. A person's not taking care of themselves. They're not eating properly. All kinds of disorder.
I would think that what we should do in public health care is that this should really be targeted, because I would be so concerned about the immune system of all these different people, because they're not eating properly, they're stressed, Wow. You
That's
know.
right. It creates an imbalance.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yes.
Wow. And well, what is the next one?
Yeah, let me see. It says there is currently paucity, which would be a
Scarcity, huh?
scarcity. There you go, of clinical data supporting the use of cannabinoids in the treatment of back pain. More the same.
It's the same thing again. Talking about the same thing that is like, I'm dumbfounded here. I'm sitting here because, everything I've heard. So, Dr. Sedaris, you talked about this drug-free world program. So tell me, what is the philosophy of this program in terms of handling what's going on with this?
Yeah, I think in essence, it's basically get the truth out there. Sometimes people hear saying no to drugs. You tell a kid no, they're going to want to do the opposite of what you tell them. Whereas with this, it's like, here's the truth about drugs. Like drugs, find out for yourself. It's fantastic online program. So it's drugfreeworld.org. You can get great booklets. There's educational videos. Teachers can do it in their classroom. There's an app. It's, it's really, really very well done. It's free. You can get the booklet sent to you for free. Download the app for free.
So there's no charge for obtaining this then?
No charge at all. It's very, very well done. It's all research-based, statistic-based. It's not opinions. It's just the facts about drugs.
Well, that makes total sense. That's the way, I guess, Bob, when you go and, you're a painter and how many years have you painted now?
About 40.
For a short time. So I would think that you must go into jobs to give estimates and the person says, well, how come you're not doing this and that and this? And you explain to them. And does that happen where, will you see that, that you have to clear up all the lies that were told? Or let's put it,
somewhat.
The misinformation, let's put it.
Right. Sometimes it definitely happens. I really enjoy referring folks to Drug-Free World because it has such a wealth of information.
Absolutely. So, engineer, is that are there any more slides, or is that it for the slide? So, it's too much. So let's put them on because we're running out of time on the show, and there's so much to cover. So, Dr. Sedaris, go ahead with this one.
Okay, so it's unlikely that cannabinoids are highly effective medicines for chronic non-cancer pain.
So basically, cannabinoids, just for those viewers out there who may not know, so basically cannabinoids are marijuana. So just so that we don't confuse people, so unlikely that the marijuana are
highly effective medicines for chronic non-cancer pain. And then the next one, which is from the Journal American Medical Association. So like you said, these are very well-respected medical journals. People do not substitute marijuana for prescription opioids.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And states with medical marijuana laws have seen a 23% increase in opioid overdose deaths.
Wow, that's Stanford University.
Right.
Wow, that's a major, really respected university. So, but again, this doesn't make any sense because here we're legalizing, and we're trying to get opioids down. And I know my dental profession, we started not prescribing as many opioids to try and get opioids down. But then at the same time, here we're legalizing marijuana. So how's that going to get opioids down? It's very frustrating because how many kids are going to be affected?
Exactly. It's confusing, right? Yep. And the next one says, adults who mix cannabis with opioids for pain report higher levels of anxiety and depression. And then lastly, it says, legalizing marijuana has contributed to the national opioid mortality epidemic.
Wow. Wow. Engineer, because we're running out of time, put the last slide on that they've sent to us so we can put that one on also. And go ahead, Mr. Carter, you do this one.
Okay. American Journal of Psychiatry. Cannabis use increases risk of opioid use disorder and non-medical opioid use.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
2018 Journal of America of Internal Medicine. Association between.
Now, I just wanted to say something to interrupt you.
Sure.
Because that's from the experts on these kinds of drugs, supposedly, so now psychiatry studies showing that also. That's very interesting.
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I just, as you're going through these things, it's very interesting to me.
Sure. We'll skip down to this next one, Journal of Addiction Medicine, April. Let me see. I'm not sure what MMJ is. Users are more likely to use prescription drugs medically and non-medically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Medical marijuana users, there we go, pardon me, are more likely to use prescription drugs medically and non-medically.
Interesting. So instead, but you know what? Supposedly the medical marijuana was supposed to be so they wouldn't have to do that. It's like, you take medical marijuana, you don't have the pain, you feel better, so you don't need any of the drugs. But what this is saying, it's not true.
Right.
Interesting.
Yes.
And what's the next one?
Okay. The European Pain Federation.
Okay.
Do not prescribe cannabis-based medicines to patients taking high doses of opioids or benzodiazepines and.
Wow. This is unbelievable. So Dr. Sedaris, because you're the health practitioner here in tonight, and just to turn it over to you. So tell me, what is it that you and Mr. Carter and what do you feel has to get done?
That's a great question. I really feel just getting the truth out there, because as you stated earlier, it's confusing. Here we are legalizing something, and then the health experts are telling us how harmful it is to take these substances and the damage it'll do to your mind, to your body, but yet it's being legalized. So the best thing to do is just get the truth out there, dispel any of the myths, just get the facts out there, let people, decide for themselves instead of being, because when there's misinformation, it gets confusing. So I think we need to help people sort through that and just read the facts.
Makes sense. Now, Mr. Carter, you were mentioning something about that you actually try to inform legislators so that they have the true information when they pass laws and or regulations. What is it that you're doing?
I'm using the Truth About Marijuana booklet to get this information to the legislators in Connecticut before a vote is taken, because it's totally essential that they do have these facts before making a decision. And I just feel also that one of the big issues is equity. They're speaking about equity, and that could be resolved. Prior convictions and jail sentences can all be resolved without any kind of legalization measure.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. We're running out of time in our show tonight. I'm so happy that I had you both on, because there's so much information here that is so important for those mothers and fathers out there, for their kids, for those legislators who are out there, and you gave those references. So I wanted to just ask you each. So Mr. Carter, at this point, if you were going to take just 30 seconds, what would you want to convey to the viewers out there? What do you think that is your important message that you want them to do? Get the facts.
Don't buy misinformation for any particular purposes. Look things over very carefully so you understand what this substance is going to do to people in the state, in our state, in Connecticut, and in other states, so that you make the right decision.
Okay. Very well said. So, Dr. Sedaris, what would you like to say in 30 seconds to the viewers out there tonight?
Yeah, the message I want to get across is a couple of years ago when I did the presentation with Miss Connecticut, we were at a high school, and it was a very powerful presentation because I talked about how drugs are poisons, and Miss Connecticut talked about hopes, dreams, goals, having purposes, and how she knew exactly what she wanted to do, and she was really aware of the people she surrounded herself with. And here she was delivering the message of get the facts, stay true to who you are, stay on purpose, because these substances will shatter your dreams, and nobody wants that. So yes, let's get the facts out there and stay true to your goals.
Thank you. Well, I was looking at this that you gave for the show tonight, and I think something that's important for the viewers is that they can obtain this at drugfreeworld.org, and they can contain information there. It says here, so it's drugfreeworld.org, and they can obtain this information. And I was looking at these other virtual classroom and public service announcements. So I want to thank you both for coming on the show tonight.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
I think it was really eye-opening, and it helps us to deal with the future. So thank you for coming. And thank you, Foundation for Drug Free World, and all of you out there who get the truth out. The show is a time for truth. And like it says in all our history Bibles, and the truth will set us free. So thank you for viewing. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a very good night.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good night.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet